Radio Free Santa Clarita presents the Talk of Santa Clarita, a podcast about issues involving Santa Clarita and the surrounding valley. Episode 130, journalist Lee Barnathan. And now let's see what the Talk of Santa Clarita is.
And remember, this is for posterity, so be honest.
All right, thanks for doing this today. I apologize. I think we've rescheduled, 6 times?
This will be the third reschedule. Yeah.
So one thing I'm known for is reliability. So I apologize.
Well,
for that.
excuse me.
No, I do apologize for that. I am glad to get you here, and welcome back.
It is good to be back.
Yeah. So Lee Barnathan, do you have an official title at Santa Clarita Gazette, or are you just a freelance writer? Or?
I do not have an official title. I should be, but okay, let's go back. When Doug had his radio show, he called me senior writer.
Okay.
But my byline just says correspondent.
Okay.
So I really don't have a name.
But you're not on salary with them. You're freelance per story or something.
No, I'm salaried. I get a certain amount every week.
Oh, okay.
No matter how many stories I write.
Okay. Now, I'm curious. I mean, how do you get your stories? What do you do when you get a story? How do you find your stories or what to write about?
Okay, there's a lot of ways.
Okay.
One is somebody will come to me, they'll email me, they'll call me with an idea.
All right.
They may send me documentation. They might not.
Okay.
And I may need to see documentation. My publisher, Doug Sutton, also gets ideas from people.
Okay.
Whether, again, phone calls or emails. And sometimes I'll take a national issue and I'll try to localize it.
Right. Okay. Now, if Doug gives you a story, do you have the right, or have you ever said, "No, I don't want to do that"?
I won't say no, I don't want to do it.
Yeah.
I'll say I don't see the news value.
Okay.
Because there's plenty of stories that I don't want to do, but they need to be done because I don't care about the subject matter. But I'll do it because, number one, I recognize the story value. Two, it fills space. And maybe it's a time of year where it's really slow and we got to do something really fluffy and really sweet and cute. Right. And.
Well, let me I have a slight bone to pick with you. Slight one. The David Barlowby story, the board member on the Saugus School Board.
You talking about the story when he was running?
No. I'm talking about the story mentioning about the fact that he was raising his fist when he
right,
was
we call it the David Barlowby salute.
The David Barlowby salute. I like that, actually. Was that Doug's idea or was that yours?
It was mine.
It was yours?
Yeah.
Okay. What was the news value in doing that? I'm curious.
You have a public figure. Okay, let me start. It wasn't my idea because somebody brought the picture to my attention. Once I saw the picture, it wasn't Doug who brought me the picture. Someone showed me the picture, and I saw the value in it. Okay, now to answer your question.
Yeah.
You have an elected figure who is doing something that, number one, is out of the ordinary.
Okay.
And number two, it's related to something else that we've seen. We've seen Colin Kaepernick do something. He didn't put his fist up. Right. But for us old people, remember Tommy Smith and John Carlos doing something similar in 1968.
Sure. You're talking about the Olympics.
I am. And so you have a guy who had just been elected doing something unusual for an elected official. That's always going to have news value. Now, I didn't call it the David Barlowby salute. That came from somewhere else. Right. But I really felt that he should explain why he's doing it. Not because, for the sheer news value. Why are you doing it? Why was Colin Kaepernick not standing during the anthem? Well, why was David Barlowby doing this? And he explained it, and that's all I wanted. Well,
I mean, where was that YouTube video out about him doing that? You know what I'm talking about,
no,
right?
I don't know.
There is a YouTube video of him doing that salute, or whatever, the David Barlog salute, or whatever we're going to call it, on YouTube now. And
maybe this show I got was a screen capture. I don't remember.
Okay.
But I got a picture,
right,
and that's the photo that we used.
Well, you're aware of what happened afterwards, right?
I think it's terrible. I don't think death threats are ever warranted or merited for especially doing something as insignificant and inconsequential as this.
Okay, you just called it inconsequential.
It is inconsequential.
Then why don't you run a story on it?
Because news value can be consequential or inconsequential. Just because you have different levels of news value doesn't inherently mean there's no news value.
Yeah.
You could argue that the president, whoever the president is, took a whiz on the lawn. Mm-hmm. Okay, that's news because the president did it. Mm-hmm. Trump picked his nose because he's the president. Mm-hmm. If Obama were president, Obama picked his nose. That could be considered news. It's insignificant, yes.
Right.
But it's news because he did it. So there's levels of news value.
Do you feel, you're aware of the death threats.
Yeah.
Do you feel any amount of responsibility for running the story, making it an issue at all?
The death threats predated.
No. From my understanding, the death threats began after you ran the Gazette story because they became aware of it. And
really? Because people knew that he was doing it before the story ran. Mm-hmm. And I was under the impression that the people who were threatening him were those who saw the story before the story came out, meaning they were in the room when he was doing it. Because the first time that we wrote about it wasn't the first time he had done this either. It was...
No, he'd been doing it for
a while, as he told me.
Okay.
Hi, David.
No, our publication, the Proclaimer, ran a story afterwards about the meeting after you ran the story in the Gazette.
You did.
And
let's hear it for
what were you going to say?
Let's hear it for competition.
Yeah. I felt that we had kind of been led into a problem. We had been played a little bit. I allowed the situation to do the story on it after you guys had done the story, anticipating some kind of hoopla. And what happened was David ended up getting death threats, which is never okay, no matter who it is.
I agree.
And I guess it comes back to, I look at the Gazette story and I kind of wonder, did that create the situation? Would have anybody even paid attention or bothered to even say anything about David doing that if the story hadn't been run?
And the answer is we don't know.
Okay.
You can certainly make the argument that it would have gone away and it would have died down. Mm-hmm. You could make the argument that somebody saw it and objected, and that's why they brought it to our attention in the first place. And maybe if we had done nothing, they still might have escalated to death threats. I don't know. To David's credit, he has never told me, I got death threats because you ran this story.
No, David has been very, about the fact that everybody has a right to free speech and welcomes it.
And one of the aspects of free speech that you have to remember is that sometimes, and this sounds really, really bad, and yet it's also true.
Yeah.
The press cannot control the reactions of the people who read what the press wrote.
See, I don't disagree with you on that, but at the same time, there's a certain kind of was there any thought before you ran the story that we might be inciting something?
Oh, God, no.
Okay.
No, because if we thought that we'd be inciting something, we would consider not running it or writing it differently or sitting on the story.
Okay. See, I read it, and it seemed like to me that you were trying to stir something up.
No, that's not true. My sense was to simply have him explain what he was doing and why, and he did, and that's exactly what I wanted. I really don't have much of an opinion of what he did. Mm-hmm. I do believe in his right to free speech.
Right.
I believe that Colin Kaepernick was unnecessarily singled out and blacklisted in the NFL, and I realized that David may have opened himself up to similar reactions. Of course, he was already elected, so he wouldn't be blacklisted per se.
Right.
But no, I've never seen anything that I do lead to death threats. Meaning that I have never been able to predict, oh, if I write this, someone's going to get a death threat. Right. No, I don't go there. It's not in my sphere of knowledge. It's not in my...
Right. So
it's not my logic.
You don't take a pause to go, this might create a problem?
I will pause and say, does this create a problem if there is a lawsuit potential?
For you, I mean, or the
for
Gazette.
Me, for the Gazette, or any publication that I'd be working for.
Right.
So if, I'll give you an example. A story in the Gazette today, and it'll be in print tomorrow, it's online today. It's the story I wrote about mail theft. Okay. The story mentions that somebody was arrested.
Right. Okay.
On Facebook, there is a name of a person who was arrested. Okay. I checked with the sheriff's department. Their spokeswoman gave me a different name.
Okay.
I did not see a police report. When I went back to the woman who did the post, and it's Stacy Fortner, I told her, well, the sheriff's deputy told me it's definitely different. And she said, well, the sheriff told me this name.
Yeah.
Well, you won't see the name in the story because I can't verify who was arrested in connection with this theft because I don't have a police report. So I don't have the documentation.
Okay.
So if I were to mention one of the two names, I could be opening up a possible lawsuit for libel. Now, realistically, there wouldn't be a lawsuit because there's no malice.
Right.
But you're misidentifying somebody, that's a problem. And maybe running a retraction wouldn't be enough because they'd be guilty in the court of public opinion. So I left it out and I didn't include the name or names.
Well, I'm going to say this and then we'll move on to some other things. But to me, when you have Doug, who is known to be right-wing, the Gazette, for the most part, runs right-leaning material.
No, I don't.
Well, not you necessarily. But its audience, for the most part, I would say, is probably a more right-wing. The article seemed to me, it was baiting for trouble. And I
would challenge you to show me where in the article there is an implication that I wrote anything that says, okay, troublemakers, here's your opportunity to go after Barlavi. I challenge you to find that.
I would say just the fact that you were making it an issue. That would be my contention.
I would argue that I wasn't making it an issue, that I was simply giving him a chance to explain what he was doing.
Okay.
Now, and he did, and that's fine.
Yeah.
We're going to agree to disagree.
Yes,
but the reality is, I did find it interesting why he chose to do it. Black Lives Matter, Colin Kaepernick. I have no issue with people exercising their right to free speech, modeling after other movements. I'm fine with that.
That's fine. And like I said, we'll agree to disagree. I'll just say this. I did feel... I have regrets for the Reclaimer running a story on it because I felt like we helped incite the situation after you guys wrote the initial article. And, to David, openly, I'm going to apologize to him for that. And David's going to be a guest on the show in the next couple of weeks, and we can talk about it. So, but let's talk about some other things. You're giving me a stone-faced look. I call it the Bob Keller look.
The Bob Keller look.
No, Bob Keller would...
I nominate Cameron Smythe.
There you go. No, the Bob Keller look is the unbelievable look of disapproval without saying a word,
if you watch the video of the meetings, Bob is sitting in a place where you really can't see his face because he's looking away from the camera.
Yeah.
Except when they have the other camera on him.
But I was talking about like when I did the podcast with him.
By the way, I like Bob Keller. I'm going to miss Bob Keller.
Are you?
I am. I'm going to miss Bob Keller when he's not on council anymore.
I don't have any problem with him personally, but I will say that he seems to have a problem with me. He did the show, and I asked him a couple questions he clearly didn't approve of. And
well, he may not approve of me mocking him right here, and I admit I wasn't trying to mock him as much as I was trying to imitate him.
Yeah.
But
folks.
I recognize that I open myself up to criticism by imitating people, and he may come see it as mockery. And Bob, I am sorry. I really am going to miss you when you're gone. And I will tell that to you in our next phone conversation.
There you go. All right. So the main reason we were having you on today is you've been writing a series of articles about College of the Canyons, a whole bunch of different things, and you've, in a certain sense, you've been really coming after them. I guess is the best way to put it.
No, I think the correct term would be holding them accountable. I don't think coming after them is the right term at all.
Okay. What is your beef with the College of the Canyons?
Again, I disagree with your terminology.
Yeah.
I don't have beef with College of the Canyons. I didn't go to COC.
Right.
Nobody in my family did. I don't know anybody in my family who did.
Right. What I'm saying is, I think you've got 6 articles that I've looked at that are College of the Canyons specific.
Yep.
That are, I guess, digging. Not even digging, but just pointing out things that you see that are not kosher, I guess.
That's correct.
Okay.
Yeah, that's very correct.
You would, and they're different things too. I mean, so I guess the first question is, you don't think that it might even appear that you might have some kind of beef with College of the Canyons because you're continually doing stories on them?
It hasn't even crossed my mind
really?
that people would think that I would personally have beef, because again, I have nothing to do with COC.
Right.
But this goes back to a journalistic philosophy that I have, going all the way back to when I was in journalism school.
Okay.
And that is that a journalist's job is to be able, and should be able, to hold people and organizations in authority or in power responsible and accountable to the people they serve.
Okay.
And these stories are showing glaring examples that they're not doing it. Now, we have stories, and other people have written stories in the Gazette and the Signal and Canyon Country Magazine and other publications about all the great things that COC does.
Right.
And the reality is what I'm writing discounts none of that. I'm only shining a light on this other aspect that needs to be brought to the attention, because you cannot have a school as a big employment center that is a major organization, for lack of a better word, in the Santa Clarita Valley, mistreating its faculty and its staff like that. That is heinous. That is unacceptable. That is unforgivable. It needs to be brought to light. Now, all I can do is bring it to light.
Okay.
I cannot make anything change. And obviously, that's not my goal. My goal is to simply hold them accountable.
Okay.
Make them answer for what they're doing. And if you look at the stories, everything has documentation.
Have you been seeking the stories out, or have people been coming to you?
The first story
This is on the harassment issue. Is that right?
The first story I wrote was actually about the board.
Okay.
The Brown Act violation, and, well, I have to say alleged because it was never proven, but it is believed that they broke the Brown rule. Or as I wrote, they may have violated the Brown Act.
Okay.
And then the other story, which is very clear to me, that they did not self-evaluate. The board did not self-evaluate itself correctly, in keeping with its own practices and its own norms and procedures. Okay. And I have the documentation to back that up. Those are the first stories. Okay. Those were brought to my attention.
Okay. Who brought them to your attention? Do you want to say?
No.
You're not going to say?
No.
Okay. Well, why don't we talk about those? Tell me what was going on with the situation of the Brown Act and the self-evaluation stuff.
Let's see. The Brown Act, as you know, requires. Let's see.
I think it's something about. And now I'm putting on the spot, about full disclosure, about holding meetings and discussing certain topics. I think it's financial mostly.
It's not all financial. It requires meetings must be public and open, that the public must have a chance to comment publicly.
Right.
And I wish I had read the article before I came in, because it's been a while since I've read it. because I knew you were going to ask this. But one of the tenets of the Brown Act is that meetings have to be open to the public.
Right.
Okay?
Right.
And any committee that is created by a board pretty much needs to be open,
Right.
which means it needs to be public, which means its meetings need to be publicized so the public can attend.
Right.
This is a situation where they had a finance committee where the board, and I have it in the minutes, established this committee. Now, since a board of trustees has to be open and public according to the Brown Act, a committee that it creates must also be public.
Okay.
And I there are exceptions, but in this case, I'm being a little simple, but it works and it applies in this case. That a committee that a board creates must be open. Okay? And they have to have minutes, and the minutes have to be posted, and you have to have a chance to go to the meetings and comment, etc.
Right.
And this finance subcommittee was not doing that.
Okay.
It's really that simple.
How many times did they met in violation of the Brown Act then, allegedly?
I have no idea. Okay. I have minutes that went back years.
Really?
That from 16, 17, maybe even 15, maybe even 14, that showed that they were having meetings, because here were the minutes. But I had board members saying, well, I didn't know when these meetings were, so I couldn't go. Well, that's a problem.
Yeah.
And that is a violation. Now, to say it's a violation doesn't mean anything, because the Brown Act no one has ever been found in a court to have violated the Brown Act and have to be penalized or pay fines or whatever.
Right.
Okay? So to say that an organization or a board violated the Brown Act really has no teeth. It doesn't mean anything. But I firmly believe that this board finance subcommittee violated the Brown Act.
What was this subcommittee for specifically?
It was finance.
Just finance in general, or was it for a specific project?
There was probably something specific that I don't remember right now. But one of the persons who knew the committee existed was a woman named Donna Freyer, who was Donna Haywood at the time, because she was working in the finance department under Charlene Coleel, who was believed to be a member of the finance subcommittee.
Okay.
Because she was identified by a lot of people as being on this committee, and she would give reports to the board. So even though there was no committee, they say, there were still briefings at board of trustees meetings. But when Joan McGregor wanted to go to a meeting, there was no meeting to go to. It was really very, very...
How did the board respond to your article? Did they say anything about that, or?
The board said nothing. I don't get calls from board members. Now, granted, I've spoken to the board members, and the only person I haven't spoken to is Steve Zimmer, because he immediately, without even asking what I'm calling about, refers me to the president of the board, who's Michael Berger. And Michael is sometimes available to talk, and sometimes he's not. I've had it both ways. I spoke to Michelle Jenkins. I've spoken to Adele Alonso. I've spoken to Joan McGregor. But never have they called me. I've always called them.
Well, what I mean is, did they respond or say, "Oh, this is wrong"? And then police brought it to
No, they didn't say that. They never said my stories were wrong.
Yeah, no, that it was wrong what they were doing. And did they respond or fix it or anything?
Nothing's been fixed.
Okay.
I do believe that there are people who believe that the board has violated the Brown Act, that the board members believe the Brown Act was violated, but again, there's no teeth. It doesn't mean anything.
Yeah.
But one of the members of the board finance subcommittee was Charlene Coleel. Well, she had an employee under her named Donna Haywood, now Donna Freyer.
Okay.
And Donna was the first story that I wrote about, where I wrote about the court case in which there was no court case, but the court documents, in which she was harassed, intimidated, retribution made against her.
What kind of stuff? Can you give us some specifics? Or?
She basically called out her boss for doing things illegally.
Okay.
Example, when it comes to a bond measure, a school cannot give an endorsement. A school cannot have its employees work for the passage or the defeat of a bond measure.
Right.
A committee has to do that.
Makes
you want to
sense.
put a college official on the committee, fine, you're working now in the capacity of the committee. But as a member of the university staff, you cannot do that. So what Charlene would do is she would announce in a meeting that everybody had to go to, okay, we're on a break, right there in her office or on campus somewhere, and say, okay, we're on a break, and you need to give money to this committee, or you need to give money to help support Bruce Fortine's re-election, which is what she actually did. And Donna refused to go along with that, and she called out Charlene for doing that, and that changed everything. And she was harassed. She believed she had her phone bugged. The door to her office was removed. The curtains in her office had to be taken down, so she lost privacy. She was treated differently. They created standards that she had to meet that never had to be met before, and they made her life a living hell.
Where did they? I mean, on these little breaks, as she called them, was she ever told that she had to do it?
Yes.
She was told she had to give money.
Yes.
Not just a friendly suggestion or anything like that. She was
A friendly suggestion meant you had to do it.
Okay.
Or being told you had to do it meant you had to do it. Because the school wanted 100% support, 100% of the faculty to support. And I don't remember if Donna actually gave money. She usually didn't give money, she usually gave time. So you still would have some sort of proof that you did what the school wanted. But she called out her boss.
And what happened ultimately with her?
She filed a lawsuit.
And where did that go?
It went somewhere because they eventually settled. Never got to court, but she settled. The only thing she can't do is discuss the terms of the settlement. She can discuss everything that happened because she refused to sign a non-disclosure, and she has told everybody after that, don't sign a non-disclosure. Unfortunately, they haven't, so I have got other stories as a result. But she lost her job. Her health suffered greatly. The story dictates and indicates ways that she lost her health, and she's never worked again.
Wow. And there was two cases of, if I remember correctly, of harassment or discrimination that you wrote about. Is that correct, or is it just that one?
No, there was a second.
What do you want to tell us?
That's an ongoing one. Okay, first let's go back.
Okay.
Before Donna's case, which was 7 years ago, further back, there was a case, Gina LaMonica. Okay, who filed a suit, and the Signal wrote about this. This predates my time at the Gazette. She filed suit claiming discrimination because she got pregnant. Okay. I tried to talk to her, and she didn't want to talk about it. So I didn't go there. But I bring it up just because I didn't write about it, because it's in the public record, and she in fact filed, and the Signal wrote about it years ago. From the story I wrote about Donna, people started coming out of the woodwork. There are people who, some were willing to talk to me, some were willing to talk and then changed their minds because they were afraid either for themselves or their spouses who also work at COC.
Right.
But one of the persons who wasn't scared was Laura Anderson. Now, I should start by saying I have never spoken to Laura. And I haven't spoken to Laura because her case is ongoing, and she won't talk to me because her case is ongoing.
When you say people came out of the woodwork to talk to you about it, how many people? Can you give me a general idea of how many people approached you about the different situations?
From that story, or just over time? Because there's been a kind of steady stream.
A steady stream. Just give me a general, like, that employees, I mean, how many employees are out there that have reached out to you saying that they've been discriminated at or harassed or?
7, 8, 9, 10.
Really?
Yeah. Haven't talked to all of them. Some I can't reach, some won't talk to me. But there are a great many.
And I mean, are they coming out of the same department, or is it throughout?
No. Donna, it was in finance. Gary Sornborger is in the auto shop. Laura's in a different department altogether. I don't remember which one she was in, but she wasn't in the same department.
Why do you think it's happening at College of the Canyons? I mean, is there a pattern? Is it by leadership that's establishing this precedent about a way to treat the employees, or is it more? I call it the Twin Peaks thing, which is like the more you dig, the more you find. That it's evident everywhere, kind of thing. But you just kind of surprised until you start digging.
I may not be answering your question, but I'm going to say this. This is like Harvey Weinstein.
You think so?
In that, and I don't mean to say that what COC is doing is nearly on the same level of heinousness as what Weinstein has been accused of doing for years and years and years.
Yeah, I get that.
But what I mean by, I consider this my Harvey Weinstein story, or Weinstein, is that somebody wrote about the very first person who came forward to accuse Harvey Weinstein of this. Then somebody else did, then somebody else did, then somebody else did, then somebody else did, and there was an avalanche or the dam burst, whatever cliche you want to use. Well, okay, I haven't had a dam burst, but this led to this person, who 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 led to this person.
Right.
That's what I'm talking about.
Yeah, the cynic in me is like, I feel like because you wrote the first story, you've got other people coming forward on it or talking to you about it or reaching out to you on some level, and sadly I would predict that that's probably evident at just about any large organization, the kind of harassment that these people are talking about on different levels and different things. I mean, I think harassment takes place on employees everywhere. You know what I mean?
And a lot more than it should.
Yeah. Oh, absolutely. I'm not saying that it's okay or anything like that. I'm just saying it's sort of like that's the rock you turned over and you found stuff. But probably if you went to any large company and turned over a rock, you're going to find that kind of stuff. Is what I'm saying.
Okay, I found it at COC.
Okay, all right.
And every single incident that I can find, I'm going to write about, because I truly believe that an organization, I know I'm repeating myself, needs to be held accountable.
Okay.
And people need to see how widespread it is, that it's not an isolated incident, and that there are more episodes than I know about or I can write about, because some people don't want to because they're afraid, because there is a culture of fear.
Yeah.
So to answer your question, why is it happening? You have to look at the leadership. I mean, where else can you look?
Right.
If you've got, and trust me, I am not sitting here accusing any individual of orchestrating it. Okay, I don't believe there is a grand conspiracy.
Right.
Okay, I don't believe that Diane Van Hook is telling everybody, you mistreat this person and you mistreat this person and you. I don't believe any of that.
Okay.
At the same time, you have to look at the top. You have to be able to see that this is happening on her watch. Okay, so whether it's conscious, whether it's being directed by her, or whether it's happening without her knowledge, the buck stops with her.
Absolutely.
And so,
do they have a whistleblower policy at COC, or do you know?
They have a whistleblower policy. As a matter of fact, it's a very weak one, and Laura's case includes, as part of her demands, to beef it up, to increase it, to make it more prevalent.
Okay, so,
or maybe they don't have a whistleblower. Maybe they don't have a whistleblower policy. I mean, there are. Okay, the school does not have a whistleblower policy per se. The state law has whistleblower policies that the school must follow because they're a public university.
But organizations can also have their own.
Right. I don't believe COC does. I could be wrong. I don't know. But I know that Laura's case has in its demands things to create a whistleblower policy and things that the school must do, notices that the school must post, related to harassment and intimidation and retribution.
Well, I mean, it seems like that would be the issue more than anything else, is that the COC doesn't have a well-established whistleblower policy.
The state law should be well-established enough.
The Brown Act is a law too, but by your own words, it's not really reinforced or
well, yeah.
I mean, there are loopholes or ways around things, and by state law, it can mandate a lot of things, but people can go, oh, you can do it this way, and of course we're abiding by it, but still, my point being is that if COC had its own whistleblower policy that was maybe stronger than what the state law is, this might not be a problem. Just a thought.
It's a valid thought.
Why, thank you.
I don't. Come on, I'm reasonable. I will tell you what's valid when I think it's valid.
You also talked about being cited for lack of self-evaluation for the board.
Correct.
And tell me about that.
While I was working on the Brown Act, I was also made aware that the board has policies, and the state requires a college board, to evaluate itself.
Okay.
Every year I think it is, or every 2 years, I don't recall right in this moment, and they weren't doing it.
Okay.
I mean, it's really that simple. They were not doing what the board requires. How do we know this? Because when they go up for accreditation, one of the things that a school has to do is show that it's been evaluating itself, because the school does it and the board does it.
Right.
And the president gets evaluated and the board gets evaluated.
Right.
And the board evaluates the president and the board evaluates itself. And it wasn't being done regularly enough. How do I know this? Because during the accreditation process, there were reports from the accreditation body, the Western Association, I forget what it's called, and it was showing that COC was not doing it. The thing that was most interesting to me about this was there were problems within the accreditation body while this was going on, because the old president of this accreditation body went after City College of San Francisco. And basically the school sued and the school won, and it messed a lot of things up for a lot of people, and the president had to step down and resign, and they got a new president. But during that time, there were letters and reports being sent to COC saying, look, you are not self-evaluating yourself properly. And I don't know if you remember this, but the Masters University got hit with the same thing.
Yeah, I do remember.
Okay, and the Masters University got sanctioned. COC did not get sanctioned. They got warned. Well, Michelle Jenkins, who was president of the board at the time, wrote a letter to the head of the accrediting body to basically say, well, no, this isn't true. And the guy took her word for it, even though the documentation showed otherwise.
How many times did they not do self-evaluation?
I had it in the story. There were many years that they didn't.
Really?
Yeah.
Why do you think that was intentional? Do you think that was just like they forgot or didn't bother? Or what was your...
My take is that they just weren't going by their own policies. They weren't abiding by them, and either nobody spoke up or nobody knew to speak up.
Okay. And the danger is that College of the Canyons could lose their accreditation based on that, right? I mean, is that correct?
That is a real possible outcome, but it's not really going to happen.
Why not?
Probably because COC is now doing its evaluations. So
did they start? I mean, what, in the last year or two?
Yeah, they started doing it again in 2018. They didn't do it in They did it in 9, they didn't do it in 10 or 11, they did it in 12, they didn't do it in 13 or 14, 15, they did it in 16. They didn't do it in 17, whatever it was. There were years, and the article says which years they did and didn't do.
Do you think it's because there's been some change on the board that might be...
There hasn't been change on the board.
Well, Adele Alonso just recently was elected.
Well, one person doesn't change enough. You need more widespread
Bruce
change for anything.
Fortine was defeated as well, wasn't
No,
he?
Adele defeated Bruce.
Oh, okay.
So you're talking about the same seat.
Same seat, okay. All right, well, that's definitely something of concern. Then we've talked, you also talked about legal fees for Diane Van Hook.
Right.
For the, I guess, the the incident between her and Steve Petzel.
Right. The only thing that I wanted to know about that is, was she entitled to be reimbursed?
Yeah.
And this is a really interesting situation because it doesn't say one. The law doesn't say one way or the other. The policy doesn't say one way or another.
It would seem to me, and for backstory, Steve Petzel, fan of the show and friend of the show, did do something I think that may have been. Well, anyway,
would you like to specify what it was?
He was very against Measure E.
He was very against Measure E.
And posted a video using a BB gun, saying
shooting at a target.
Shooting at a target, and apparently Diane Van Hook considered that a bit of a threat or a danger, and got a restraining order against Steve.
That is
correct. I know Steve. I don't think he's a danger in any way, but it was a little extremist. It's one of those things in this day and age. You never know what to think, particularly if you don't know the person. So
the bottom line is that she did get a restraining order against him,
right?
And she did ring up legal fees for having that done,
right?
And it was like $15,099. Okay, the amount is actually immaterial. It could be $100. It really doesn't matter what the amount was. It happened to be that's the amount.
Right.
The school's rules, the state law, clearly says that a president who is sued does not have to pay out of her pocket. It does not say the same thing if you initiate the legal action, but it also doesn't say that if you initiate legal action, you are on the hook to pay. It doesn't say that either. It's very vague.
Okay.
The timing of it was very strange, though, because this happened in 2016 or 17?
I think it was 16.
Okay. But she didn't write the check to the attorney out of her personal account until 6-7 months later, and she wasn't reimbursed until some time after that.
Right.
So there's a
why is that strange?
If the restraining order is at this time, why and the work is done, why is it taking so long to pay? Now granted, there may be an agreement between Dr. Van Hook and her attorney that you don't have to pay till this amount of time.
Right.
Okay? Maybe the school didn't have the money available and she needed to front the money. And there's so many things that I don't know that make it suspicious, but possibly entirely explainable.
Well, my guess, and literally this is just my guess, but to my knowledge, that restraining order was appealed, and so there were more legal fees probably, or more work for the attorneys to do, and that's probably why it stretched out to a 6-month payment.
And again, if that were true, that's a possible and perfectly reasonable explanation.
Sure.
And like I said, the real crux of the story is, should she have been reimbursed or not?
Well, I mean,
the rule, it doesn't say one way or the other. That's really it.
But isn't it logical that she should be reimbursed? I mean,
it'd be logical for the rule to specify too, and it doesn't.
Okay.
I think in the grand scheme of things, it's much smaller and less significant than the problems that the employees, the faculty have suffered from their bosses intimidating, committing retribution and hazing and whatever else.
No, I agree with you on that.
Than if the president got paid back or not. Okay.
Yeah. But you also did a story about the possibility of a violation with Measure E, having the fact that they had there was a campaign room, I guess, at the mall. Am I remembering correctly?
You are.
Yeah. That might have been a violation as well. Do you want to tell us about exactly what was going on?
The situation there comes down to, again, a school cannot advocate in favor or against a bond measure.
Okay.
But the committee can do it.
Right.
Okay, so if you want to go work for a committee, you're welcome to. But the agreement showed that it was from COC to Westfield. Okay, now, as a COC employee, you cannot be doing bond stuff during COC time. You can do it off your overtime. You want to negotiate a contract during non-business hours, that's fine. But you cannot do it while you're working.
And the contract specifically said COC, not...
That's right. Did not say committee yes on Measure E. It said College of the Canyon. Not Canyons, it was misspelled. And the name of the person was Claudia Dunn, who at the time was the assistant to the president, or superintendent, or chancellor, or whatever Van Hook wants to call herself today. So the reality is, it looks really bad that COC violated state law in favoring Measure E. That's not right. In the work to set up a Yes on E station at the mall. Because it looked like it was done by COC on COC time. Because you can't tell me that Westfield is negotiating contracts before 9 a.m. or after 5 p.m.
Right.
But then again, I didn't speak to anyone at Westfield. Guy didn't call me back, so maybe.
If I remember correctly in your article, though, they did say that they believed that was actually a donated room. Space.
No, that's true. It was donated. The COC paid nothing for the room.
Okay.
And that's an interesting situation. And the board, I think it was Joan McGregor, told me that the board knew that there was going to be a room for nothing at the mall. And that's fine.
Right.
But the point isn't the money. The point is that the contract was probably done by COC, not the committee. Because the committee, I had the name of the committee, and it wasn't College of the Canyons, and the name of the person who was involved, who was head of the Yes on E, wasn't Claudia Dunn. She wasn't on that committee, at least not one of the 7 co-chairs.
Right.
So you've got what looks like no separation. So even though the contract was for nothing, it looks a lot like COC broke the law. But again, it's a misdemeanor.
Right.
So what?
Well, I don't know, man. You're the one writing about it.
Well, and I wrote that they broke the law, but it's unlikely that anything's going to happen because it's only a misdemeanor by state law. Yeah. And is the DA really going to waste its time and resources on a misdemeanor
for an organization that is
from 2 years ago almost?
Right.
Well, now it's a year and a half, but it'll be 2 years by the next election. Yeah. So, all I can do is report that they may have broken the law. And then we come back to what you have said at the very beginning. What is the effect that the stories have on what the community does? And the answer is, I don't have any control over that.
Okay. Do you think, the one pattern I see in these stories is, ultimately the buck stops with leadership. But
let me stop you for a minute.
Okay.
I do not have any report in any court document of a person directly accusing Diane Van Hook of intimidating or acting in retribution to some action. It is somebody else. It is a dean. Okay, it's the various names, but it's Charlene Coleel. It's Claudia Dominguez.
Right.
Or whomever else it was. Nobody has said Diane Van Hook committed this crime. So you could say, yes, it's House of Leadership, but Diane has not been accused. She's accused in the lawsuit. She's in the lawsuit because she's the president of the college.
Right.
But nobody has said Diane's the one who's causing intimidation. Diane's the one who's retribution.
No, but I wasn't accusing her of anything. I'm just making the point that ultimately all of these issues that you've brought forth come back to leadership and the way that the school is run in general. The idea that there's not a whistleblower policy specifically for the school.
That I'm aware of.
That you're aware of. I'll have to look and find out. But the lack of self-evaluation, I'm assuming the chancellor would have some involvement in the self-evaluation or knowing that it needs to at least be done.
Well, she's the parliamentarian, so she's at every board meeting. She's keeping the minutes. Of course she knows what's going on.
Yeah.
If this were an NCAA sports investigation, you would possibly accuse the school of a lack of institutional control. That's the closest that I could come.
Okay.
No, nobody's accusing anyone of lack of institutional control. I'm just saying that's what it sounds like.
Right. Okay.
That could be a conclusion that I draw.
How long has Diane Van Hook been chancellor to the school? 30 years, 40 years? I don't know.
I don't think it's 40. It's probably 30. It's 30, and it's probably a few more than 30, but I don't know for sure. But
she's certainly done some.
It's been a very long time.
She's certainly done some amazing things for the school.
There is no doubt that the school would be a different school if she were never the head person.
Right. I guess my thought from talking to you is that there's a certain kind of perhaps it might be time for new leadership, in the sense that these things seem to be happening as you're reporting. That maybe somebody's been there too long. I don't know. Again, valid point.
Yeah. I have no control over that. The only way you change that is in an election. And you've got 3 people running for re-election in 2020. Michael Berger,
Adele, right?
Adele Alonso and Michelle Jenkins, or is it Berger not running, or if Zimmer's running? There's 3 people running.
Right.
Okay, I believe it's Adele and Michael and Michelle, but I'm sure of Michelle and I'm sure of Adele. Those 2 are running, and there's a 3rd seat, and I think it's, you know what? I remember now. It's Zimmer.
Okay. Well, maybe.
Those are the 3 running. So, if people believe that there needs to be a change in leadership, then they need to elect people on the board, who they believe will affect change.
Right.
And I have nothing to do with that for several reasons. 1, I'm just a reporter. 2, I don't live in any of the districts that I can't vote.
The best you can do is bring it to your...
All I can do is what I set out to do, and that is hold them accountable. And then whatever's going to happen is going to happen.
Do you think this is... Well, would you say that this is something that stands out as far as a real problem that's unique to COC, that the issues that you brought forth, or do you think that maybe these are typical? I don't know if I'm phrasing this correctly. I
don't know if it's typical, but it's happening at COC.
Okay.
That's what I know.
Okay.
And it will continue to happen. Even if I write about it, it's going to continue to happen. And all I can do is bring it to light. Now, I have told everybody I've spoken to in these stories, if you suffer as a result of me writing about it, you need to let me know. Not only has nobody told me that, but I've had one person tell me that they're leaving him alone because the story was written.
Wow. Okay. Let's bring up. I do want to talk about Steve Petzel just a little bit. Do you have any kind of friendship or relationship with him?
I would not call it a friendship.
Okay.
Steve is valuable because Steve does suggest stories that I find there is news value to,
right,
and I will pursue them. And sometimes they're dead ends, and sometimes they turn into real stories. And
the reason is obviously with the restraining order that happened between him and Diane Van Hook, and for lack of a better way of describing his obsession with Measure E. Sorry, Steve.
Are you though? Really?
I do like Steve Petzel. I really do. I like him. And I don't agree with him on a lot of things, but I like him as a person. He does seem to have a beef with College of the Canyons, and I'm curious about your relationship with him. Because you are writing a series of stories about College of the Canyons. He is the first to post them on Facebook and say, very interesting story about what's going on at COC. Very interesting story about what's going on. You should look into this. I at one point commented on one of the stories because I didn't feel that it was a big deal. I mean, it was actually about the room at the mall. I was like, I don't know if that's a big deal. And of course, I wasn't aware of the contract situation. But he actually texted me because he was concerned about my comment. I guess my question is, are these being fed to you from Steve Petzel? Are you pursuing these things based on the fact that Steve Petzel is pulling them out for you to look at? I can't help but ask that question.
Okay, you can ask it.
You going to respond?
I will respond as I will respond this way.
Okay.
Okay. I will repeat what I said. Steve does bring things to my attention, and I will pursue those that I believe have news value.
Okay.
And if they prove to have news value, we write them. And if they don't, or if I can't get any confirmation about it, it dies. I will tell you a story. When I first started at the Gazette, I met then council member Dante Acosta because I thought it was a good idea to get in touch with all the people who were the leaders of the city. So I sat down with him, and we talked about a lot of things. But one thing that I remembered that he said that every time the Gazette mentions Steve Petzold, its credibility goes down. And when I heard that, two things went through my head. One, I need to find out about Steve Petzold. And two, I need to find out why he would say that. Because as soon as you tell me, a reporter, in effect, stay away from this guy,
right,
I'm not going to stay away from this guy just because you said so. Right. I'm going to look it up. I'm going to see what he's about.
Sure.
Okay? And so I am very aware that everything I write about COC, Steve is probably jumping up and down joyfully because of his past with COC.
Right.
I assure you I am not writing things so he can jump up and down. I am not writing...
I've seen Steve jump up and down. It's quite a sight.
I haven't. I write the things that I write because I truly believe that these organizations and people need to be held accountable, and it needs to be brought to light. And what the public does with it is out of my control. Now, I'm going to be honest. More honest than I have been already. Every reporter's fantasy is to write a series of stories that affects change.
Right.
Okay?
Sure.
So it would be a major thrill for me to write these stories, and then next year at 2020, the board changes.
Right.
So things change. That would be a major thrill for me because my stories help make people see the light, and they affected change this way. I would love that. But
we'll see what happens.
But I don't have any control over it. It didn't work with Bill Miranda. I wrote a series of stories on Bill's money issues with the chamber and the Latino chamber.
Yeah.
And it did not stop the public from electing him the following year. So, that was an opportunity for me to write stuff, again, holding the leader accountable.
Right.
And the public, in effect, collectively yawned. And maybe that's what's going to happen here. Maybe the public will collectively yawn, and the people will be returned to the board. I don't know.
What else? Just real briefly, we're going to sum up here. But what else is going on that you're looking into? Any other issues out there beyond COC, or any other organizations or things you want to talk about that you might be looking into? Or
nope. Can't talk about it. Can't talk about it.
Can't talk about it. Can't talk about it.
Nope. Can't talk about it.
All right.
Only once they come into print.
Well, then you'll come back and talk about it, I hope.
Oh, God, yes.
Absolutely.
If you'll have me.
At the sixth-time postponement thing or whatever. Something new we're doing is I'm asking people to give us their best evil villain laugh. Can you do that? Are you willing to do it?
I wish you had given me advance notice so I could practice my evil laugh, because some people think my laugh is automatically evil.
You are a reporter, so...
Exactly. All right, let me try and do an evil laugh.
All right. That was actually creepy. That was brilliant.
There is a fine line between evil and creepy.
Well, we will keep.
Why do you want to know about an evil laugh?
I don't know. Just you know what? It was amusing.
Why don't you ask me what my favorite curse word is while you're at it? Since we're going to do questions like that. I know, that's why I suggested it.
You know what? I'll tell you why I do it, because it's interesting to put certain people, particularly like Katie Hill or Frank Ferry or somebody like that, on the spot and ask them to do something silly, and see how they react to it, and if they're willing to do it. Christy Smith was not willing to do it. Katie jumped right at it. Frank Ferry jumped right at it. It's fun just to see what happens. And how
Sock it to me?
Exactly.
For all you old people out there.
Dick Nixon reference.
Laughing reference, too.
Yeah, there you go. Lee, I appreciate you coming on the show, and we'll have you back again after you have some more breakthrough stories. And
Was that an evil enough laugh for you, too?
I'm sorry?
Was that an evil enough laugh for you, too?
It was great. I'll sample it. But I do appreciate you coming on the show. It was a good time. And definitely, if you want to check out some of the stories, they are available in the archives of the Santa Clarita Gazette at santaclaritagazette. Is it Gazette? What is it?
santaclaritagazette.com or scfree.net. And then search my name.
Okay, there you go.
Two places.
Yeah, it's they are definitely worth checking out the articles. I recommend.
Yeah, let me plug myself. There are people, and Steve Pessel's one of them, who believe that I am the only journalist in the Valley actually writing about these kind of in-depth stories. And that's something that I hope is not true, but I'm certainly proud to be thought of that way.
Well, that's a badge of honor to have. So,
and no death. Actually, I've had death threats, but not from these stories.
Give it time. No, but thanks for doing the show. I appreciate it. It's been...
You gonna sue me? Is that it?
No,
You're gonna threaten me? You're gonna threaten me because I wrote about your buddy Dave Barlavi and it caused death threats. You're gonna kill me now?
No,
is that it?
No. I'm not that kind of guy.
I know you're not.
But thanks for coming on the show. And
glad to.
And we hope you guys enjoyed the talk.
You've been listening to the Talk of Santa Clarita. Listen to us on iTunes, SoundCloud.com, YouTube, and Stitcher. Barring a life event getting in the way, a new podcast is available every Tuesday. Questions, comments, and show ideas can be sent to thetalkofsantaclarita@gmail.com. You can also call or text us at 661-505-8672. That's 661-505-8672. Follow us on Twitter at The Talk of SC or on Facebook, Instagram, and YouTube at The Talk of Santa Clarita. You can also visit our website by going to www.thetalkofsantaclarita.com. This has been a production of Radio Free Santa Clarita Incorporated, a 501c3 nonprofit organization. To donate, go to radiofreesantaclarita.org/donate. Radio Free Santa Clarita, on the net and on the air, and we're very much aware.
Any questions?